The last time we saw Jeffrey Epstein in West Palm Beach was September 6th of last year. He was getting off his private jet at PBIA to huddle with lawyers, fighting charges he used his mansion in Palm Beach for sexual escapades with girls under 18. Reliable sources tell us he'll report for a year-and-a-half term in prison in Florida in June, then face a year probation. The fact that Epstein was allowed to travel to Israel reflects his vast business interests around the world, according to someone close to the case. But allowing someone soon to be imprisoned on felony charges to leave the country is highly irregular. That, according to investigative journalist John Connolly, who has covered the Epstein scandal from day one.
In most instances where people are facing criminal time and because a plea agreement has been made or they're under arrest for serious charges, they are forced to surrender their passport. And apparently Mr. Epstein has not been forced to do that.
The fact that the court ordered Epstein not to have contact with underage girls may indicate that Epstein will be labeled a sex offender. That is something his vast stable of high-powered attorneys have been fighting. Sources tell us that Epstein will likely report to a state prison with modern internet facilities so that he can do business from behind bars. It's been more than 3 years now since Palm Beach police started investigating Jeffrey Epstein. Reporter Connolly says money has bought him time.
I've always been a bit shocked by the way the state prosecutor has handled this case from the get-go. Historically, the police have asked for arrest warrants and been given them. In this case, because of apparently some very high-powered attorneys, they've treated Mr. Epstein much differently.
And this is the other story getting a lot of traction today. Is it possible that Epstein, because of the newly released information about him regarding his mysterious travels with a phony passport, as we reported here a couple of days ago, may have some type of intel ties to either our government or possibly another government seeking to blackmail the men who attended those parties, those, supposed sex parties? Look, as conspiratorial as it sounds, given the nature and the reach of this story, the unexplainable details of his deal with the feds, the stamps that were found on his passport, we determine that you deserve to at least hear the facts wherever they may lead.
Sure. Well, what happened today is essentially that he was denied bail by this federal judge. He requested the ability to await his trial at his Upper East Side mansion. The judge said, no, you're a danger to the safety of others, including your accusers or alleged victims and even some prospective victims. So he got a hard no on that. But in terms of what else we know, it's looking more and more every day as if this hedge fund was actually a front for something else. As we know, this fund is offshore, right, in a tax haven at the U.S. Virgin Islands, which means he didn't have to report how much money was on the record. You don't have to report what kind of holdings you have, right? And another curious thing is that the only public client, the only person known to have been a client of this hedge fund is Leslie Wexner, a billionaire for sure, the CEO of Victoria's Secret, but no one else is known to have been a client of this hedge fund. So here's what an actual hedge fund manager, Doug Cass from Seabreeze, had to say about this. He found this quite curious. He said, I went to my institutional brokers, to their trading desks, and asked if they had ever traded with him. Not one institutional trading desk, primary or secondary, had ever traded with Epstein's firm.
Let me stop you, because I want to be fair and, I suppose, give Epstein the benefit of the doubt from a legal standpoint, right?
Sure.
Is it possible that everyone's running from the ship because they're afraid to be associated with this big rat?
Oh, I mean, that's definitely happening. I mean, you see that being covered in the corporate press nonstop.
So, I mean with these traders who are saying, oh, I never did business with him.
Oh, yeah, of course people want to distance themselves. But in this case, we're talking about an institutional trading desks. They have no records of trading with Epstein's firm. So, of course, on a personal level, you have, some of his friends or so-called, social acquaintances distancing themselves in that way. But I think this is different.
But this is a record. What you're describing is there's a record of him trading. And,
well, there's no record.
But
exactly.
But they're finding no record.
Exactly.
Right,
which is why many are saying that this may have been a front for some sort of blackmailing operation. Even one of Epstein's alleged victims, Victoria Jeffrey, one of his accusers, said this. She said, he got girls for Epstein's friends and acquaintances. Epstein specifically told me that the reason for him doing this was that so they would, quote, owe him, and he would, quote, have something on them. So this is leading some to speculate that he may have been part of some bigger intelligence operation. It's possible that he's just a very sick individual, right? And for some reason enjoyed watching other men abuse children.
Or both.
That's, of course,
possible. He
right.
could be a sick individual who was used perhaps by either foreign, as a foreign asset.
That's a good point.
Or our CIA asset.
That's a good point. But
right?
it does stink of a more professional blackmailing operation when you talk about how big this thing really was. And let's bring it back to that controversial plea deal, right, from Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida at the time, who, as we know, resigned Friday. He said, even he himself said, I was told Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. So this has led some to question, okay, intelligence asset for who? So let me take you to Robert's...
Can I just stop you for a minute and challenge you on that one? I don't believe anything Alex Acosta says, because he's going to say whatever he has to save his ass. And
you certainly, are justified in doing that, of course. But this isn't him. This doesn't make him look good in any way. You don't understand what I'm saying? So that it comes from him, I find significant. So let me take you to Robert Steele, who's a former CIA and military intelligence officer.
Okay.
This is his statement. He says, I remain of the view that Jeffrey Epstein is a Mossad clandestine operations officer, assisted by Mossad clandestine operations officer Ghislaine Maxwell, and that their mission is to do precisely what they have been doing: entrap U.S. politicians, judges, celebrities, prosecutors, and corporate leaders.
And most governments will do this if they could. It just so happens the Israelis are really good at it.
Right. I mean, what could be a better asset than someone who has all this dirt, right? This quote-unquote blackmail on a lot of powerful players. And even Philip Giraldi, who's also a former CIA and military intelligence officer, said this. He said, here is how it would have gone if it were true. Mossad would have exploited Epstein's contacts, arranging their cooperation by having Epstein wining and dining them while flying them off to exotic locations, providing them with women and entertainment. If they refused to cooperate, it'd be time for blackmail, photos and videos of sex with underage women.
So the idea would be that any powerful man, be he tycoon, prime minister, prince, or former president or present president, if somebody was to say to them, I have video of you with a 14-year-old girl.
You do whatever they wanted.
You own them.
Right.
Well, first of all, you guys are touching on some really important points, but a couple of other things to add to this conversation is simply this. Number one, you mentioned about Alexander Acosta and saying you don't believe what he's saying, so try to save his butt.
Right.
I agree with you, but the statement he made about Epstein being intelligence was actually not made when the heat was on him. It was actually made prior to his confirmation hearing to become labor secretary. He was asked in an interview by the Trump administration when they were vetting him, saying, is this whole Epstein thing going to cause us problems? He said, it's not going to cause us problems because I was told to back off, that Epstein was above my pay grade, and that he's some sort of intelligence.
Great point.
So it wasn't when he was under this heat. That's important. Second thing is this, this Maxwell connection is kind of shocking. If you really take a look at what's going on with it, Robert Maxwell, the billionaire from the UK who owned a newspaper empire there have been allegations and claims for many years. He died in 1991, by the way, in a completely bizarre way. He was standing naked on his yacht named after his daughter, and then jumped in or fell into the ocean near the Canary Islands and either drowned or had a heart attack, and there isn't even a clear cause of death for him. The claims have been made over the years that he was Mossad. In fact, the British Foreign Office believed that he was absolutely a double agent, and they believed that he was Mossad. So if he was Mossad, possibly, it's also possible that his daughter is connected to Mossad, and that's how she's connected to Epstein, because the two have been together for years, but don't seem to have any relationship other than her being his fixer, which is a very strange relationship for the daughter of a billionaire to take.
Adding something to what you're talking about right now, Michelle had mentioned to me, Maxwell was essentially his only partner, client.
Right, so the daughter of Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, pretty much acted as this recruiter and even sometimes a participant in this sexual abuse. But I think Ben is absolutely hitting the nail on the head. We have this father of his partner in crime with very strong ties to Mossad, who's been accused of being an Israeli agent by many journalists, including Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh. And in a book called Robert Maxwell, Israel's Super Spy, that actually really details both his life and death, a very strong case is made for the fact that he was actually assassinated by the Mossad after he became a liability.
All right, let me push back on both of you here a little bit. Could it be that Maxwell just happened to be one of his many clients, as, can happen in most cases?
Are you talking about the daughter?
So I'm talking about both the daughter and Maxwell, whoever it was that he's being tied to.
No, because Maxwell... Okay, go ahead, Ben. Yeah, sorry.
To you.
Well, no. I was going to say, so Robert Maxwell was not a client in any way. But here's something interesting, Rick, that because I know how you like to go down this rabbit hole, right? Think about this. Robert Maxwell, after he died, he is a British citizen, was given a state funeral in Israel. The prime minister got up and said that he had done much more for Israel than anyone could ever know this day during his eulogy. So Robert Maxwell was clearly tied in ways to the state of Israel that go far beyond what the average person would be, and even the average billionaire. He was connected very, very heavily to that. As for his daughter, in terms of her involvement, again, her relationship to Epstein is so important because, again, here's a woman who seems to go around and recruit these girls for him and gets nothing out of it, other than to be like kind of his partner in crime. And then last thing I'd say about this, the black book that Epstein has the names of so many, and not just in the United States. We're talking about U.S. politicians. We're talking about, again, his relationship with people like Prince Andrew. The king of Saudi Arabia, King bin Salman, is in that book. So he's connected to people all over the world,
listen,
and people with whom the Israelis would want to connect.
I read the New Yorker today, Gabe Sherman's piece. I saw some of the new names that are out there. We are out of time. Wish we could go, but I'm just going to ask you yes or no. Michelle first. Is he going to sing?
No.
Ben?
If he sings, I don't think they give him time to. He'll also fall off a boat someplace.
Wow. My thanks to both of you. Good segment.
Thanks.
Dershowitz is in the midst of a campaign to try and clear his name after Jeffrey Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre accused him of once receiving sexual favors from her at one of the deceased monster's properties. Now, you may remember Giuffre as the victim who alleges that she was forced to perform sexual favors for Prince Andrew of the United Kingdom, prompting a disastrous interview for the prince with the BBC, in which he claims he's never even met Giuffre before, despite the existence of that photo, which shows his arm wrapped around her midriff. Andrew, for the record, claimed in that interview that the photo was doctored and now is stonewalling the FBI, who seek to interview him on the subject, as we covered here earlier. Now, Giuffre's accusations against Dershowitz have come under renewed scrutiny after the release of a Netflix documentary on Epstein that was one of the most watched in America for a period of weeks. Dershowitz, in the course of litigation trying to clear his name, has access to some of Giuffre's accusations against other powerful people, which he decided to reveal. Some of the names are known to have been accused by Giuffre. One was not. Dershowitz's new court filings show that Giuffre alleges that along with Dershowitz and Prince Andrew, she was forced to have sex with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, alongside prominent individuals like former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, former Democratic Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, billionaire Thomas Pritzker of Hyatt Hotels, hedge fund manager Glenn Dubin, an unnamed foreign prince, an unnamed foreign president, and the owner of a French hotel chain, and lastly, Victoria's Secret owner Leslie Wexner. To be clear, this is an allegation. It is not proven. Nearly all of the men involved have issued a denial of either the specific accusation or having any knowledge of Epstein's predilections. But it is the inclusion of Barak and Wexner's name which raised quite a few eyebrows for those actually familiar with the Epstein case. Barak has long faced scrutiny for his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, with whom he had a business relationship. But did it extend far past a business relationship? Epstein's neighbors told the Daily Beast in August 2019 that he was known to have crashed at Epstein's residence in New York City multiple times over the years. They always knew it was him. They said it was the presence of security guards. And in case you don't believe them, this is definitive proof from 2016 showing Barak with his face covered up walking into Epstein's house uncovered by the Daily Mail. Barak claims that he was just cold when the photo was taken, but additional photos taken by the Daily Mail that day show several young women entering the residence after Barak showed up. Now, this is not a frivolous accusation. This is the former Prime Minister of Israel admitting on the record to have entered business arrangements with Jeffrey Epstein long after he was already a convicted sex offender, having been photographed at his residences and with neighbors saying he stayed overnight there often. It is with that context that we have to weigh the accusation by Giuffre against Barak and all the other men involved with Epstein who have so much to lose if the real story ever actually comes out. Now, other than Barak, the other name which takes on outside significance there is of Giuffre's accusation against Leslie Wexner. Those familiar with the case will recall that one of the suspected ways Epstein got his initial possibly ill-gotten millions was by obtained power of attorney over Wexner's finances in the 1980s. At the time and afterwards, many wondered why exactly one of the most powerful billionaires in America at the time would agree to give sweeping powers of finances to Epstein. There has never once been a clear explanation from Wexner as to why exactly he told Epstein, why he left so much power to Epstein over his life for so many years. Perhaps we just got a pretty good idea. So taken together, these accusations reveal a small glimpse, a tiny one, into the web that Epstein created and possibly used to ensure that some of the richest and most powerful people in the world, spanning several continents, for now have been ensnared. It's just a glimpse. Now, we won't drop this case. Not now and not ever. And, I mean, this was really bombshell stuff, Crystal, because we knew that Ehud Barak had been, slept over at his residence. He'd been photographed. I mean, he claims he's... Who wears a scarf?
It's cold.
It better be 20 below if you're wearing a scarf like that.
It's funny you see that and you're like, oh, that was not when the pandemic was going on. You got no excuse, buddy.
No, and actually his security guard who was right next to him, you can't see it in the photo, was not wearing the thing like that. So, if everybody's that cold, anyway.
When I'm really cold, I cover my mouth.
I don't want to get deep into that. No, what I'm saying is we knew many things about Ehud Barak. We knew that he had a business relationship with Epstein. We knew all this. This is the former prime minister of Israel, one of the most powerful countries in the Middle East, who is sleeping over at Epstein's place, who is taking his money, and now is being accused. Virginia Giuffre is a very credible woman. That is just established based on the Prince Andrew thing alone, based on the numerous photos of her with Ghislaine Maxwell. We know that, it's a horrifying story what happened to her. She was basically somebody who wanted to be a massage therapist and was roped in by Ghislaine and by Jeffrey Epstein in order to perform all these sexual favors for powerful people. She's one of the only ones who's been willing to speak up and out about the many of the people that she may have been involved with, not by consent, of course, but being forced to. So, do you see those names I listed? We're talking about former governors, Senate Majority Leader, billionaires. The former Prime Minister. It's absolutely crazy, and the Prince of the United Kingdom. All of this just goes to show, which is how much there was to lose, and how much Epstein, after he was a convicted sex offender, was able to ensnare all of these people.
Well, and that is one of the things that is really outrageous, is this was after that conviction.
2015.
Right. And so, what are you doing? What are you doing still having any kind of business relationship or other with this individual? And the other piece of this is Alan Dershowitz, not only was he accused, but he also was part of securing
the defense,
that sweetheart deal down in Florida that may have violated, by the way, the rights of the survivors who were involved with this, because they weren't even told that a settlement was made.
That's in violation of law.
Appears to be in violation of the law there. He gets this sweetheart deal. He's on work release. It's like nothing. It's a slap on the wrist, and then he's able to just go right back to exactly what he was doing before. So, Sagar, help me understand, what are these legal filings? What are they in reference to? And is the idea here from Dershowitz basically that if he puts out, oh, she's accused all these people, is he trying to undermine her credibility, like she's just throwing around accusations at everyone?
Yeah, I believe the legal filings are in relation to Dershowitz and Giuffre, but I think he has access to some of her secret depositions, which had not come out. So what he wanted to show is like, look, he's putting, what he was saying is, look, she's accused all of these people. She needs to independently verify this, and this. And there's actually some decent evidence on Alan Dershowitz's side whenever it comes to his accusation. And so I want to be very fair to him.
And he has completely denied all allegations.
Denied it from the very beginning. Said he's never even met Giuffre before. So that I want to make that extraordinarily clear. But what he's done is he says he has accusation to Giuffre. Now, I personally think any accusation by Giuffre is something that has to be evaluated to the fullest extent because of the Prince Andrew situation, because he is an abject liar saying he's never met her before, whenever we know he was friends with Epstein, stayed overnight at his properties, and we know that he was photographed there with this woman who he now is like, oh, this is a doctored photo. That's just a fact. And this just goes, I think, to show more, which is that there's so much more that we don't know.
Do you remember meeting her at all?
No.
Do you know you didn't meet her, or do you just not remember meeting her?
No, I don't know if I've met her, but no, I have no recollection of meeting her.
Because she was very specific. She described the dance that you had together in Tramp. She described meeting you. She was a 17-year-old girl meeting a senior member of the royal family.
Never happened.
She provided a photo of the two of you together.
Yes.
Your arm was around her waist.
Yes.
You've seen the photo?
I've seen the photograph.
How do you explain that?
I can't. Because I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken.
Do you recognise yourself in the photo?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult not to recognise yourself.
Your friend suggested that the photo is fake.
I think it's, from the investigations that we've done, you can't prove whether or not that photograph is faked or not, because it is a photograph of a photograph of a photograph. So it's very difficult to be able to prove it. But I don't remember that photograph ever being taken.
But it's possible that it was you with your arm around
That's
her
me, but whether that's my hand or whether that's the position, I have simply no recollection. I don't remember that photograph ever being taken. I don't remember going upstairs in the house, because that photograph is taken upstairs. And I'm not entirely convinced that, I mean, that is what I would describe as me in that picture, but we can't be certain as to whether or not that's my hand on her, whatever it is, left side.
You think that...
Because I have no recollection of that photograph ever being taken.
So why would somebody have put in another hand? You think it is you next to her in the photo?
Oh, it's definitely me. I mean, that's a picture of me. It's not a picture of, I don't believe it's a picture of me in London, because when I go out in London, I wear a suit and a tie. That's what I would describe as, those are my travelling clothes if I'm going overseas. So I've got plenty of photographs of me dressed in those sorts of, sort of kit, but not there. There
was a witness there, Johanna Stolberg, who says that you did visit the house in that month.
I probably did. I don't think, on one of the weird things, I was staying with the, because of what I was doing, I was staying with the Consul General, which is further down the street, on 5th. So I wasn't staying there. I may have visited, but no. Definitely no activity.
I'm just wondering, when you look back now, is there a chance that those massages might have been the services of someone who was being sexually exploited or trafficked by Epstein?
No. I don't think, no, definitely not.
You had a number of meetings with Jeffrey Epstein, who, when you met him 10 years ago, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution from minors. What did you know about him when you were meeting with him, as you've said yourself, in the hopes of raising money?
I had dinners with him. I regret doing that. He had relationships with people he said, would give to global health, which is a interest I have. Not nearly enough philanthropy goes in that direction. Those meetings were a mistake. They didn't result in what he purported, and I cut them off. That goes back a long time ago now. So there's nothing new on that.
It was reported that you continued to meet with him over several years, and that, in other words, a number of meetings. What did you do when you found out about his background?
Well, I've said I regretted having those dinners. And there's absolutely nothing new on that.
Is there a lesson for you, for anyone else looking at this?
Well, he's dead, so in general, you always have to be careful. I'm very proud of what we've done in philanthropy. Very proud of the work of the foundation. That's what I get up every day and focus on.
Let me ask you one other thing, something in the complaint there, the affidavit you're holding there. She says that this financier, Jeffrey Epstein, whom you know, had sex with underage girls on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and it was, quote, obvious to those around him, so obvious and bold, she writes, that anyone spending time at one of his residences would have clearly been aware of what was going on.
Okay, it's
you
total,
did spend time there. Were you aware of such a thing?
Of course not. In an academic setting. I first met him through Lady DeRothschild. I then had dinner with him with President Shimon Peres. I then met him with the developer of the genome. We had an academic relationship. I was never in the presence of a single young underage woman.
Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Mossad, and a connection to 9/11. What's going on?
Yeah, well, Jeffrey Epstein, had this network going with Ghislaine Maxwell. Her father was, of course, Robert Maxwell, who was the guy who sold Promise software for the Israelis. Her father was found dead floating in the Mediterranean Sea a few years ago. He was a very, very high-level agent for the state of Israel, working under a man called Yitzhak Shamir. And the thing is that what Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were running was a kind of a trap. They were running the sexual operation which compromised people of influence, politicians and what have you, who fell for the trap, who got themselves into compromising situations, whether on his island or his houses or whatever. And this is being used to control people, control the political elite of the United States and other countries. And you see how they even got the royal family of Britain involved. Now, this operation was an operation that is closely connected to the state of Israel and Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak is a close friend of Jeffrey Epstein, and they were business partners. Now, what happened with Epstein is that where did Epstein's money come from to run this operation? Well, it came from somebody called Leslie Wexner, who's the Victoria's Secret's magnate from Ohio. And Leslie Wexner was one of these American billionaires who was working with Ronald Lauder. He's another one. Steven Spielberg, the Bronfmans, people of that sort. They had this group called Mega, which was created by Yitzhak Shamir in 1991. In 1991, after the first Gulf War, there was a pressure on Israel to compromise at the Madrid Peace Conference in the spring of 1991. And Yitzhak Shamir was pushed. Netanyahu was at the conference with him in Madrid. They were being pushed to make compromises to help the Palestinian situation be resolved. Of course, Yitzhak Shamir wanted nothing to do with any compromises with the Palestinians, so they blocked it. And in order to win the public relations battle in the United States, they created this group called Mega. And Leslie Wexner turned over a huge amount of his fortune, millions of dollars, to Jeffrey Epstein, who ran something called the Epstein or the Wexner Foundation. And with that money, he was a partner with Ehud Barak. So Jeffrey Epstein and Ehud Barak were working very closely together. And Epstein was providing money from Wexner to Barak, millions of dollars. And then Barak founded a company, and on the board of directors of that company, a board of advisors, is Michael Chertoff, the man who did not investigate 9/11. So you have Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, who supposedly was killed in prison, connected to Ehud Barak and Michael Chertoff. So you have this is a connection of the highest people at the highest level of the 9/11 operation working with Epstein. So that's why the Epstein case has not been investigated any further than his supposed death in the prison in New York. Because again, this is a case that's not meant to be investigated any further. It's meant to be stopped. And because it would reveal too much about how Israel operates.
Wow. So then I'm just going to ask you this question because I don't know the answer to this question. Mm-hmm. I have thoughts. Do you think that the operation that Epstein was running was backed and protected by the CIA, Mossad, both, or neither, and who was really pulling the strings, protecting him for all of these years and years and years?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's definitely an Israeli component there, because Ehud Barak was a very close friend of Epstein. And Ehud Barak, for example, there's photographs of him entering into Epstein's townhouse in New York and coming out with a scarf around his face. As a former prime minister, everywhere he goes with bodyguards from the Israeli state. He wouldn't be going into something like Epstein's house without the knowledge and approval of Mossad. I mean, Israeli security and military would know, because he's, so I think that the Israelis are definitely involved in it. And the fact that Leslie Wexner, provided the money, it indicates to me that there's probably involvement of, in my mind, the Rothschilds as well. Because this operation was a very big one. And I don't think that Israel did it on its own. I think that it may have had financing from somebody like the Rothschilds. But this is the way this kind of thing has been operating. Is that it's not just the Israeli state that does these things. But I do think that the Israeli intelligence was involved in it completely.